Brahma Chalani, I read a piece here in the Financial Times which says India's Narendra Modi visits Vladimir Putin to strengthen ties and hedge against China. What's the China angle here? How should we see it? And this question to you, I mean, in the context of, the global competition here and the fact that America wants to use India as a hedge against China, where does China emerge in the India-Russia relationship? Would it be impractical for us to say that our relationship, our closeness with Russia is completely devoid of any China angle here?
There are two things. For more than 40 years, the US actively aided China's rise.
Yes.
In the process, it created a strategic rival of a type that the US has never faced before. This is the greatest strategic adversary that the US faces now. But in the process, it also created for India. It saddled India with a adversary bent on regional hegemony. In other words, the US policy of 40 years of aiding China's rise has imposed direct security costs on India. And now, the Western policy is driving Russia toward China. And this makes it even more imperative for India to reinforce its ties with Moscow. A key motivation behind India's efforts to strengthen its relationship with Moscow is that it believes Russia can counterbalance China. Let's not forget that the India-Russia relationship goes back to 1971, when the US was in China to open a military front against India during the Bangladesh War of Liberation. And it forced Indira Gandhi, then Prime Minister, to sign a friendship treaty with Moscow, whose security provisions helped deter China from opening a military front against India. So the China factor has always been central to India's relationship with Russia. Russia and China are not natural allies, they're natural competitors. It's US policy that has driven
them together.
Russia toward China.
But can, in the present context, Dr. Tarak Artha, can Russia in the present context counterbalance China? Can they really do that? And how does that help our border dispute issues, our relationship with China, are managing that equation?
Well, as far as I was told, this is not on my own authority, but what I was told is that during Galwan, when we needed assistance, that assistance came from Russia, and it came very quickly. Right, so that is something we are not likely to forget in a hurry. You saw Jaishankar at the SCO meeting saying our economic relationship with Russia is not something which is yesterday's issue. It's going to go on for good. So there is, in fact, his own statement last December when we signed on to the follow-on Kudankulam nuclear deal was that this is a country with whom we enjoy a level of trust. That's been there, like he said, for years. You can't move out from this. In that sense, Russia's comfort with China is not that great. So, they have a very real fear of Russia dominating in Central Asia, dominating in Siberia. So, while we would want to keep Russia with us, I think the Russia-India trust factor is completely missing in terms of the Russia-China factor. So this is a different relationship. So both need each other. Given this, for us, the weakening of Russia is a huge, huge problem. And that is where the Ukraine war comes in. We don't want to see Russia weakened. I don't honestly see any point in it. So I think NATO countries, who are meeting now, the message that is that if you're talking about peace on Ukraine, the UN security resolutions and its principles are at the bottom. That's what the State Department is saying. Whereas we are saying, let's end this war. It's harming everybody. That's our bottom line. It's harming us. It's harming us a lot.
Dr. Karta, you've given a very interesting analysis on this, and I want to bounce this off you, Ruslan, where Dr. Karta, who's been with the National Security Council Secretariat, says that it is India and Russia who've been the closer and older relationship, historical, civilizationally, whereas it is Russia and China which would have been more adversarial, because Russia sees itself as the larger power. China has an edge economically right now, but in terms of power play, Russia has dominated the global stage for far longer than China. And more important, I think, also in terms of power projection, geopolitical power projection, and in terms of having a fighting army that has defeated all the global powers, including Hitler in the past, right down to the present. It is a fighting army. China is not a fighting army. So Russia has a fighting land army. So she's making a point here that India wants to see a stronger Russia. And I want your take on that, because I remember this, that in June last year, when China and some other G20 member states were not there at the G20 tourism summit hosted by India in Kashmir, Russia ignored the China boycott and participated. When also 2023, I think it was, that when India and China held their commander level conferences, there were reports that China will hand over the S-400 missile defense system to India. This caused outrage in China, but Russia gave India the S-400 system. So Russia has chosen India over China on a couple of very important occasions.
Arnab,
is that pure quid pro quo, or is there something else here?
Arnab, you won't believe how often I'm asked this question in Delhi, in India. What about China? What about Russia and China? What's happening there? Listen, my response is normally, Russia used to be, for the past 300 years, it used to be a European state, European country, culturally, politically, militarily, strategically, in all respect. I mean, you might argue about the Soviet days, historically. Now, we feel we've been mistreated. Our key concerns, our key security interests, our key economic interests in this relationship with the West, with Europe, have been ignored, neglected, brushed aside. Russia is now reaching out to the rest of the world, to the countries that are joining this massive Western coalition, like 100+ countries that have not joined the sanctions. It reaches out to Africa, it reaches out to the Middle East, it reaches out to Southeast Asia, to China, to India, in an effort to build up the relationship and the partnership that is built upon this principle of mutual trust, mutual respect, transparency, predictability. And in this way, Russia is not choosing China over India or India over China. It is about being pragmatic, and it is about building up the ties and relationship that is beneficial to everyone.
True, I take that, but Russia will also have to be aware, and I'm sure it is, of the tension between India and China. And we are always going to ask the question, aren't we, Dr. Karta, that when push comes to shove, where will Russia stand? Am I right? I mean, am I putting in layman terms here? Maybe a geostrategist like you can put it better, Dr. Karta. We always, yes?
I think that's absolutely, pretty much stating it up front, like, look, where are you going to come in if there's trouble, right? But the thing is, I know Russians are very, very careful what they say about China. I've seen this often. They always say, we're all, everything is fine. It is not fine. India is not ever going to be a threat to Russia. China could be a threat to Russia tomorrow. This is also plain speaking. And if Moscow doesn't understand, then they're not the power that I thought it was, right? At the moment, there is a certain dependency. If they choose China over India at a particular point in time, well, it's worse for them. It's as simple as that. I mean, let's put this in black and white. And please also remember, we are not a third-rate power. We are one of the largest. We are coming up the ladder in terms of our economy.
Very fast.
A very much larger economy than in terms of even Russia. So there's a lot going for backing us, for getting into the Indian market, for investing in this country. And most of all, I would suggest Russian R&D needs to move into India, because that is where they're failing. If they want to provide the next generation of weapons, which is their biggest exports is weapons, I mean, apart from oil, is the defense industry. You want to get going with defense industry. Right now, you're going to go towards sunset technology.
Yeah.
You want to go to the next bed, you have to come into the startup ecosystem, which is in India. So we've got the cards here, and we will never, ever be a threat to Russia. China could be, I'm saying that again.